Hoose, The Last Village, by James E. M. Rowlands. Within a shepherd's warning of a night stands the man with pale and yellowing skin, like the freckled liver of a tramp. His eyes are slitted from the wind and the salt, and his general smell and appearance is that of a kipper, smoked and scaly. His teeth are either rotten pickets, blackened stumps, or bloody spaces, whereas his breath comes from the highlands of Scotland, a country he has never visited, but which has oft come to him. Dick Bevan is his name. "Because of you, I didn't drink last night," he shouts at his old mate, in the nautical sense, John Armitage. The Anglo-Saxons had a word for a small, dark, and empty place where nothing grew other than sand and those sad, creaking trees that bent in the gales and never cracked. That word was holl, literally a hollow. This, over time, had become hoose, the hole. Nothing of note took place here between its inception, sometimes between fish deciding to leave the sea and breathe fresh air, and 1690, when William III marched through with 10,000 men on the way to Ireland and the Boyne, whereafter it had fallen back into a deep torpor for another couple of 100 years or so. The Poor Law Amendment of 1866 declared all areas that levied a separate rate or had their own overseer of the poor to be parishes. Civil parish was the term used to distinguish some areas on the edge of civilization from ecclesiastical parishes with no institutions and flower pots and benches and bowling greens. Hoose had no church, and so was a civil parish, the lowest form of government. "Say again, Dickie, I'm a bit deaf." "Let us visit this township together, don't worry. It will soon become as familiar as your own village, town, or district. Hoose begins at the sea and ends at the railway line. It looks out towards the north of Wales and Ireland, invisible out there in the fog. It has no station. Bordered to the northeast by Great Mells, which isn't, and to the west and southwest by Little Mells, which is bigger than its namesake, Hoose is a hemmed-in, ragtag assortment of terraced streets and fishing cottages. As we stroll, avoiding mounds of horse droppings and the attacks of gulls and stray dogs from the shore, we may pass along Lake Road, Bank Road, The Grove, Grove Road, Lake Place, Walker Street, Wood Street, Rudd Street, Shore Street. There are 4 pubs: the Ship Inn, the Lake, the Plasterer's Arms, and the Punch Bowl, although the latter is frowned upon as being in Great Mells, and so posh by definition. "I didn't drink last night. It's your fault." Typical Hoose family names stretching back from the dawn of time itself are Sherlock, Dodd, Banks, Armitage, Bevan, and Eccles. The men are most often called John, William, Richard, or Arthur, and their wives and daughters are almost exclusively Elizabeth, Mary, and Anne. We arrived there in 1880. It is the 3rd day of March, early in the morning, and still pitch dark. The air is frosty but not frozen. The salty sea breezes imply negative temperatures. All things exist due to the Irish Sea. Wind is a permanent backdrop to this life. The unadorned flagpoles chime and ding, while out in the waves boys reply with their own drunken music. Richard Bevan of Walker Street is on his way to the lifeboat station. His clogs beat the cobbles like rotten coconuts. Steam flows from his nostrils and from the top of his head, while smoke pours from his pipe. His cap is in his jacket pocket. "What's that got to do with me?" asks John. "Morning, John." Armitage knows that a sober Bevan will cause his morning to feel like a week. Grouchy and cantankerous Dick it will most likely be. Are we taking her out? Dick Bevan looks into the dismal nothingness. Maybe they could wait for daylight, but the best catches come just at the instant the first tinsel of photons strikes the baying tide. Even after all these years, he always says this is a good and humble thing. He's afraid of the immensity and thrall of the ocean. Aye, let's take her out, he replies with a slight scowl, furrowing his forehead. Right you are. They change footwear. The smack, named Iris, is anchored not far off from near the Hoyle bank of sand. They can reach it on foot at low tide and then wade across. The tide is high today, and so they carry the two-man rowing boat on their heads, walk in boots down the slipway and begin the short journey out to their workplace. The further they get from land, the more eerily quiet things seem. Although no men know this stretch and these conditions as well as they do, it is uncommonly silent and calm. In minutes they find the Iris, tie up the small boat and climb in, hoist the mainsail and take their positions ready for the off. A slight southwesterly wind finally pushes them forward. This is a relief. No wind would mean no locomotion, which would therefore lead to no catch. They head for the space between banks of sand and find themselves happily alone and surfing across the waters towards the Isle of Man, although they will not go so far, due to the intense sea traffic coming out of Liverpool, the largest port in the country. They keep to their own small but flourishing area of coastline, and if all goes well, they will have income for a week. It must be 5 a.m. by now, but still no glimpse of a coming day. The wind dies down once more, but they are far enough out to get their catch without difficulty. It may be problematic trying to return, but they'll worry about that later. So why didn't you drink? Asks John. John Armitage is 10 years younger, but almost identically roughed up by his life and by the climate. He has a wife, whereas Bevan is a widower. He's blonde, where Dick is greying black. They are both surprisingly strong men for their age. They both have beards, although Armitage wears the chin strap or Dutch variant without moustache, his wife's influence. Bevan's bushy growth contains everything from dried spittle, tobacco, and food. They've worked together since at least the 1850s and are among the only men still alive who remember the terrible destruction of Little Mells and part of Hoose by what local oral history has honed into uniformed witchcraft. I dropped off in front of the fire, he answers almost despondently. I had the strangest dream, though. Oh, go on. Was it those Irish ladies again? Daft beggar. Dick punches his mate on the shoulder. No, I was at home and doing whatever I was doing when a charabanc, a small one, pulled up into the side path. It stopped, and then it disappeared, and then it came back. Time after time. And how was that any of my fault? Your wife was in the front seat. You cheeky bastard. John stands up to clobber Bevan around the back of the head, jokingly, of course. When a huge thud hits the hull of the Iris, he falls and bashes his forearm against the side. Shy, what was that? Bevan takes out the oar and pushes it down, searching for the seabed. We haven't run aground. The ship is bashed once again, this time from the stern. Hell, must be a whale. They lie flat on the deck and grab onto whatever they can, maintaining absolute calm and stillness. If the ship lurches, they will be safe. If it starts to go down, they will jump back into the rowing boat and hope for the best. There's an almighty splash about 10 yards to the starboard. The spray soaks them, but still, it's pitch dark and they stay there, playing dead. What happens next defies the vocabulary of any language, least of all mine. Imagine standing in the centre of a colossal Gothic cathedral, alone in the night, and within that space is the echoing din of railway tracks being twisted, ships' boilers being crushed, the volcanic eruption of Krakatoa, which is still 3 years in the future, and every inhuman scream that nature could possibly generate, stone on iron, wood on slate, bones of all its creatures twisting simultaneously upon a rack of incredible ferocity. But you are unharmed physically by all of this. You cover your ears, of course, and there's no landslide, no tsunami, nor is there a hail of objects from the sky. Just pure, unsurpassably hellish noise. The sound of slaughter, of revelations, and of demise. And then the clouds begin to part and the sun rises, and you see it. Innumerable corpses of fish, so deeply packed that you can no longer see the water. The iris has not been hit by one thing, but by all things, and all things are dead. This is fresh. Get as much as we can. Fill the dinghy, shouts Dick, springing into action. Soon there's a veritable hillside of fish in the boat, so much, in fact, that they must stand on it to navigate. When enough is enough, for there is always enough, they prepare to sail back. Dick! What's that, John? Look! The couple atop their greatest catch stare out at a vast, empty expanse of green water. All land has gone. Hoose, The Last Village, by James E. M. Rowlands. Episode 2. Jenny Bird sits on the edge of the promenade wall, dipping her toes into the seaweed and black pods and froth which lap forlorn against the sandstone. Her mind is consumed with one idea, one single pressing thought: to be done with Hoose by any and all means, and as swiftly as possible. Life in this place for a spinster in her 30s and with no apparent interest in finding a suitor will become one of recrimination and ostracism, name-calling and derision, alongside the taking in of others' washing, forever. She hums some familiar old shanty, perhaps a mix of several she has heard. The sea is freedom, the sea knows, the Irish girls will dance and call us on. Some say that it represents death, the sea that is, but not for this handsome daughter of Hoose, her dirty blonde hair all tied up at the back of her nape. She wears nothing upon her head, already a sure sign of rebelliousness, and prefers rough shirts and baggy strides to ungainly dresses and corsets. It's not that she dislikes men or their company. She merely prefers that of the waves and their seemingly infinite vista, a gateway from darkness. The only thing which has kept her here till this moment is her mother, smothering and fussing widowed old Ma'am Elizabeth Bird, nay, Eccles. Her father is long gone, and let us not forget the life expectancy for such people in this age. She is herself statistically more than halfway through the great shuffling of life. Jenny drops her head as the two old fishermen trudge past in the muddy sand about 100 yards or so ahead along the Hoyle bank. She does not wish to be seen, and even less addressed. As it is, they are more than occupied with the carrying of their small vessel upon their heads. Her cover will not be broken, and she returns to reverie. Imagine Dublin, New York, in fact, even Southport would do. New faces, smiles, strangers, new promises. She sees herself as a painter of portraits, and in truth has always been congratulated for her sketches and watercolours. No one in Hoose, however, cares much for art. Art cannot be worn or eaten, nor can it be drunk, although it may well just get a bonfire going. Then, as she's about to rise and take the short walk home, something odd happens. She knows the tide's here, as do all the inhabitants of the village, but suddenly she realizes that her feet are not under water any longer. In fact, they are bone dry. She peers down through the little light there is and can see the wrinkled, wormy sands stretching out over the bank, and now as far as the horizon. The tide has completely gone out. In a white-stone cottage at the end of Lake Place, John and Anne Sherlock are huddled on a creaking bed in front of the fireplace, steam rising from their mouths as they fight against the daily need to start a new blaze. A few more minutes. The children are still fast asleep on the other side of the room. Shh. Mustn't make a sound. The Dodds, who live at Backsea View opposite the Plasterers' Arms, are already up and busying themselves before his working day begins. Today he will drive his horse and cart to Walker Street, where Banks will load him up with various ironmongery, which needs to travel all the way to Birkenhead and the Woodside Ferry Terminal for sale in Liverpool on the other side of the Mersey. Dodd's horse is restless this morning, and he has the greatest difficulty in saddling her and fixing the reins. A few hundred yards further to the southeast, at the very top corner of Wood Street, is another Bevan, William, only distantly related to our Dick, who has been up all night at the lighthouse and has only just reached his front door now. This opens almost onto Market Street, the main shopping thoroughfare and one of the boundaries of Hoose. Jenny is still trying to fathom why the Irish Sea has changed its millennial habits. Dodd's horse bolts. A falling tankard startles the Sherlock children. Bevan finds himself stumbling against the wall as his key falls into the road. This is not the fault of the sea, but on whatever it stands. Deep down there, with the wrecks of great ships, the ghosts of sailors, the monsters of yore, and the crabs, something is up. The earth itself has begun to crack open. All around Hoose, in each of its 300 or so houses, cottages, shacks and yards, tiles are falling, loose bricks are now freed from their moorings, roofs are shuddering. The lucky few who are soundly asleep will miss the worst of what is to occur. Apocalypse. A monumental fracture has appeared along the centre of Trinity Road to the north. Another quickly follows down the centre of Market Street, and this is watched by the terrified Dodds. On the west of Hoose, from the beginning of Lake Place all the way to the old lifeboat station, the road is now scythed in half, dead centre. This, however, is just the beginning. Beneath the ground come profound and chaotic waves of growling, crunching hatred. Some are barely perceptible to the ear and yet beat at the ribs like a ferocious wild animal. Smoke and dust are everywhere, as is the aching of joists, the howls of deconstruction, centuries of toil, hard jobs completed then erased, null and void, like the trustworthy tables of the tides, the future pledges made by those now gone, the blessings of parents at dusk, and all by Malleus Deorum, the hammer of the gods. Without external witness, all the land surrounding our village is sucked instantaneously down into the watery bowels of the earth, in near complete hush, apart from the singing of the sea itself. It happens so hastily that those who live beyond Hoose are trapped. Only some odd bric-a-brac rising to the surface, jostling an instant around its whirling top, then just as quickly ushered away below. gives any inkling that anything had once existed here. During earthquakes, people act on instinct. Some run outside to avoid being crushed as buildings fall. Some hide under desks, stairs and beds or behind their family. Others again find supporting walls and prop themselves there, praying and pleading, reliving and recanting puddles of belated remorse. Hoose, being Hoose, there is a frantic and collective rush to the pubs. Only two remain. The Ship Inn was on the wrong side of Market Street, and the Punch Bowl now dangles over a cliff edge, disemboweled. And it is not only Great and Little Mells and the sandhills behind them, but all the land beyond that, which ripples and rises and falls, arched up and plummeting down. And the sun rises perfectly on time. Here now is an island, facing all ways and struck off before it can begin. Here are faces that have rarely seen a clinging sun, and hands from the womb like loaves wrinkled in the endless debt of work. This morning stood a sprawling, feasting human empire upon which the sun never set. A million tongues, tales, wars, generations, laws, inventions, loves, and that talisman, infinite progress. Where rose the hills in Wales lies spume, eagles with nowhere to nest, leaves, broken and contorted trunks, and finely whittled twigs like flutes. Where were all those grand northern ports is nothing now, only Hoose, our last village. Soon, as nature settles into what it is left with, decisions will have to be made, but not for now. Let us leave these poor souls time to crawl from the rubble to the alehouse and to see for themselves the new world. But mark my words, Hoose is a hard and inventive place. The stars still shine. There is no panic. An exodus is already afoot. Hoose, The Last Village, by James E.M. Rowlands. Episode 3.
Shut up!
I cannot tell for sure if the same scenes play out in both public houses this morning, but we can be certain that they most probably do. This is in the Plasterers.
Shut up and listen to me!
Says the other Bevan, the lighthouse keeper. We need to decide what to do together. The boats! Shouts a man. We have to see if there are people in the water, Bevan replies. Why are we hiding in here? It's over. Whatever it was, it's finished. There must be people in the sea. Who's coming with me? There is a Welshman in Hoose named Williams, Ellis Williams, a veteran of the British Army, although not one to mention it that often. He's in his 50s now, but still a burly fellow. Not in height necessarily, but in thickness. His crimson handlebar moustache bristles before he speaks. He pushes the man aside and takes the floor. Let me say something. I have just witnessed my whole country crumble before my eyes. Don't you understand? There's nowhere to lead to. He's interrupted.
Sod off, Taffy. It's only a landslide.
Williams continues. You know best, of course, but we would be better staying here. Well, not here in the pub, but in Hoose and waiting for help. He can see the blind panic and knows there's no point whatsoever in attempting to contradict or appease the mass. You know best. He's unheard. Before he has even got halfway through his next utterance, only his first 3 words have been taken as gospel, and the agitated folk of Hoose begin hunting for anything that floats. Strangely, and what a word to employ after all that has happened, Hoose retains a modicum of shore. Where yesterday was miles of beach is now a mere slipway of moribund slush. Each coming wave erodes what is left. The crabs grieve salt. They flake away the edges of their moon.
Of the 200 or so inhabitants, all but a score decide to take their chances with the sea. Those who will stay do so for varying reasons. Anne Armitage, because her husband is out fishing with Richard Bevan, and she can't stand the thought of his return to an empty home. Jenny Bird, because her mother is too unwell to begin a voyage. The Dodds, Williams, his wife Elenid, and their 2 daughters, the Sherlocks and their infants, a certain Mr. Grace that no one really knows that well, but have seen around the pubs, and the owners of the plasterers, Mr. and Mrs. Lewis, along with their 5 children, and a vagabond named Ben. Most leave. They always do. In the grand national of collective thrall brought on by the cataclysmic gravity of sudden and incomprehensible circumstances, the throng follows itself, pulsating down into the very ill-starred fate it wishes to avoid at all costs. They prepare to bid adieu with ale, bread, and a little dried fish in an array of measly craft, unwitting offerings upon the altar of Shir, deity of the oceans, now singular. They have clung on and bred and slept, but never yet improved their station. The haste in which they exchange the safety of this one remaining piece of solid land for an uncertain jolly in a smack is akin to the chaotic, heedless dispersion of cats when startled, or houseflies targeting the sticky ribbon in the corner of an otherwise open room, and which means them no apparent harm. This is the way of Homo sapiens, not to think, but to move in the false credence that doing anything is preferable to one brief moment of reflection. As a courtesy, they leave behind a single boat with space for 6 people, and promise that of course they will return as soon as they have found other land. Then, with hardly a gaze back, they are gone. Their dogs cry for them, jump in, and attempt to follow but swim back or drown. Those who leave their dogs and cats have no intention of return. William, the lighthouse keeper, being an authority of sorts here, he bids them sit together in the plasterers and makes 1 or 2 suggestions, which are quite eagerly agreed upon. The first, to search every now empty home and make an inventory of foodstuffs, liquids, and any other products of use at their disposal. The second, to round up all livestock and note all the places where vegetables or edibles are growing. This is undertaken in small groups. None of the houses are ever locked here. In fact, some have left their doors wide open, so little they heed their own words of a possible homecoming. An hour or so later, all reconvene with lists both mental and in writing, given not all are literate. It is agreed that they can subsist for quite a while yet, if not permanently, what with water dropping freely from the sky and fish from the sea. There are poultry in abundance, 3 sheep, 2 pubs worth of ale, and the contents of 2 backyard allotments. This latter is something they will have to take far more seriously if their predicament persists. Theirs will be a high-protein, high-fat, high-alcohol diet, low in or without fruit and with minimal greens, so not a shock to the system. Other objects or items of information which have been recovered include oil lamps, the location of coal, fishing tackle, garden and building tools, a book named Codex, and a child's embroidered pillow which reads, Jane Bird, aged 9, her work, Hoose School, 1839. It is now late afternoon on this first day of days, in which a lifetime's ordeals, loss and revelations, none least in the character of men, have been condensed into the few hours since dawn. But the day is not over yet. "Now that's strange," says Ellis Williams, gawping at the sky. "The sun is setting to the north." "How do you mean?" asks Dodds, who's not far behind. "Well, those windows face southwest, right? But the sun is shining through those over there. It occurs to all our stricken friends that this may be one incremental prank of nature upon them or against them. But are they really of such importance in the endless cosmic scheme of things that Sol, their eternal orb, would realign itself on a whim?" "Bevan, what do you say?" asks Dodds. He rubs his chin. "We've pivoted, more likely."
What?
He's asked in unison. "Hoose is afloat and drifting." As day one finally ends, the silence is broken by the chatter of great bemused creatures beneath their feet. And from afar, as yet unheard, is the cacophonous entirety of all avian life seeking land. Closer to home, the dogs are getting hungry. And where will Hoose be when the sun rises tomorrow? And if Hoose is afloat, how will Bevan and Armitage ever find them again? Hoose, The Last Village, by James E.M. Rowlands. Episode 4. It is dark and cold, so cold. The sky is deeply overcast, yet beyond is filled with wondrous, mesmerizing stars which our eyes cannot behold. 4, which may have been inclined to gaze up, are shut. The men shiver and breathe heavily. The stench is abominable, like a recently abandoned abattoir for skunk. Each inhalation brings nausea. The rancid, decaying fish mound upon the boat has caved in and become foul slush. Bevan and Armitage lie on and in this on their sides, lapels covering their mouths. They know that they must drink, that land will have to be made soon, that this unearthly gleaning of cod and inedible wrasse will inevitably be jostled and oozed over the sides of Iris. For now, they accept the immediate, sleep. No good will come of them otherwise. They do not believe the tales of sailors accepting death. All the maritime saints and masses, gatherings, tears and wreaths have never brought a lost man back. Only consternation and sadness. At dawn, land will surely appear somewhere. They will watch, and then trace the roots of gulls home. Back in Hoose, no one is able to slumber either. What a day! Jenny Bird and her mother sit in rocking chairs by a fire with mugs of hard, frothy drink, and they glide to and fro like swings in an abandoned playground. A candle reaches wick's end to their left upon the hearth and fills the air with its singeing before this is sucked up the chimney like all else. "Mother, who was Jane Bird?" she asks calmly.
Yeah,
"I found an embroidered cushion today with the name Jane Bird. Do you know who that was? A relation?"
I can't hear you, love. Relation? What?
She sighs and gives up. If only her father was still alive, he would know. It doesn't really mean much in any case, just something to pass the time, to change the subject. Outside is eerily soundless, bar the now constant cetacean opera. What could they be saying to each other? There are tales old wives' tales that whales and all those sea mammals which evolved on solid ground but returned to the deep sometimes come back when old and bewildered to die, as if an ancestry of millions of years tugs and nags them home. Jenny has been sketching tonight a portrait of her mother. The traits are distorted caricatures that the cruelest Serbian artist in Montmartre would never dare. There is an element of great unkindness in them, a biting darkness. Jenny looks at the last one, holds it up next to her mother's face, smiles, and then scrunches her oeuvre into a ball and tosses it into the fireplace.
Oh, you didn't let me see, love,
says Ma'am. It was no good. A knock. Then another.
All right, I'm coming,
she says.
Yeah, it's the door, Ma'am. The what?
She opens to find Mr. Grace standing with his hands on his hips and clearly out of breath. He's a tall man standing at 6 foot, which is unusual for these parts, and well dressed, although not overtly so. He fits in. Upon his head is a dark blue bowler hat, symbol of belonging to the middle class, of which he is the only remnant now. He has no facial hair, bar sideburns. He's neither handsome nor ugly, and he rarely smiles, but maintains something of an air of frivolity. How can I put it? He seems to spend his days in the most unproductive pursuits. Before yesterday, that is. He would collect bits and bobs from the sand, play with them, on occasion repair a machine that no one had requested him to mend, that sort of thing. You must bear in mind that such behavior amid people who are working, eating, and sleeping and little else is out of sorts. There is also an aura of melancholia around him. I ran all the way, he spits out. From where? Hoose is, after all, hardly big enough to be this breathless unless one decided to run laps around it. I need to show you something. The following morning, the sun rises in the south. At this juncture, I should describe Hoose a little more for you, dear listener, who can neither see it on a map nor in your mind's eye. It is now a ragged oblong about 500 yards long and 200 yards wide. At the top left corner, use of compass points being now moot, is the lighthouse, and at the top right is the Dodds home and stables. The Plasterer's pub is just a few yards below this and to the left. Most of our cast now congregate here all day, some all night. Bevan stays at the lighthouse as his home, situated on the very bottom left of this doomed rectangle, is now unsafe. In fact, the whole row along Market Street at the bottom and much of Trinity Road on the right side is frankly unlivable. This leaves the centre. In a recent past, Hoose was split between the sandhills of Seaview to the upper middle and the grove, which made up most of the rest, until the ill-starred Punch Bowl. There are a couple of transversal roads, once lanes. The most notable of these are Grove Road, which is just below its distant namesake, dead centre, left to right. Then below this, Walker Street, and then Rudd Street, running parallel. These are all newish terraced houses, and something far from how the older inhabitants would have remembered the place even 2 generations ago. Ponder this yourself when you next look at a field, or fields, hills, moors, marshland. These will not be here in your lifetime. Homes become villages, villages, blocks. But in our story, as you know, one village has become everything. Just above the sound of the sea and of squawking, there is shouting and growling. 2 voices, 1 man, 1 woman, and they are pleading for help. The Sherlocks are nearest to the source, and so the father of the family nervously pokes his head outside to gauge in which direction help is needed. There's a boathouse and yard just across the road. Its gate opens onto the shore.
Help us,
comes the cry.
them wild dogs are just outside.
It's Jenny. We have to draw the hounds away, John says to his wife. Do we have a piece of meat?
There's barely enough for ourselves,
replies Anne. There's nothing else for it, though, other than to shoot the dogs, but he knows neither their number nor their state of rabidity.
Anything, piece of chicken.
She hands him a dingy tea towel with morsels of food inside.
Be careful, John,
she scolds lovingly. Sherlock creeps out. His plan is to get within eyeshot of the corner of the boathouse and then call out, getting their undivided attention. And once this is done, he will run and throw the meat and hope they follow it, and not him. Sound familiar? This will give Grace and Jenny just enough time to free themselves, in theory. However, just as he reaches the anointed spot, he becomes the focus of attention for other assailants. A squabble of seagulls has smelled sustenance. They attack John viciously, pecking and beating with their wings. He attempts to lose the food, but his throwing arm is penned in by their incessant mauling. Now his own screams, plus the odor of his fresh blood, plus the chicken has drawn the snarling dogs. Grace and Jen see their chance and get away from the boathouse, but witness their neighbor's terrifying fate. Just as the pack is a mere 10 yards from Sherlock and themselves, uneasy in the face of the violent Lariday, a remarkable turn of events ensues.
Fly!
Ben, the vagabond, is standing in the center of Lake Place with what seems to be a rope twirling around his head, upon which are small bells. Fly, he says. A large hawk swoops down towards him, barely grazes his head and steams forward towards the gulls, ripping one to shreds instantly with its talons. The others waste no time in scarpering back to the sea, even roofs being of no shelter in the face of their nemesis. John Sherlock throws the meat to Grace, who in turn runs back to the boat shed, and as the dogs change course, he chucks it inside, and they follow. And he slams the door shut. We'll have to nail this, says Grace. John thanks Ben. Ben emits a whistle, swirls his rope and walks away, oblivious and unresponsive to the gratitude. The dogs are locked up now, but this can't be a permanent fixture, though. Their howls will become unbearable, and people here are close to their animals, and not inhumane per se. They will have to find a solution. Sherlock is chastised by his wife, who yanks him by the sleeve back into their cottage and bangs the door. His day is done. There will be no more ill-advised heroism from him, that's for certain. Jen and Grace, panting, turn to each other. What are we going to say? She asks. Well, we were just taking a stroll, Grace replies. Then, as the others begin to arrive, he adds, no one must know yet. She looks down at her shoes in vexation and wipes sweat from her brow. The lighthouse keeper, the publicans, and the livery yard worker, along with their wives, all want to know what happened. What was this commotion? Why? Dodds says that they could try to restrain the dogs one by one, to muzzle them, and attempt to unwild, in Hoose parlance, what has become so quickly savage and ravenous. The thoughtful Mr. Lewis quite rightly retorts, mirroring what Mrs. Sherlock has already stated, that there's already not enough food for all of them. Mrs. Sherlock, angered and bitter from behind her door, which is only slightly ajar, is of the opinion that they should be burned alive where they are. An agitated Bevan has other news. Not yet alarming, he tells the others, but important nonetheless. Old Bevan is wrong. He bids them follow him to the shore. The group stand shoulder to shoulder and gasp as one at the sight of untold hundreds, thousands of sea lions, seals, walruses, as far as the eye can see, and all heading for Hoose. Before the clock strikes midday, all four sides of this floating prison are utterly clogged by these undulating creatures. For wherever congregate seals and such, will come predators. The sea surrounding the village is becoming an unpassable barrier. No one can get out, and no one will be able to approach.
Look!
Shouts Mrs. Dodds.
Fetch an Armitage!
She tells a child. Land! Murmurs her husband in the boat, with what energy he still has.
I can see the lighthouse.
True enough. They have drifted back towards Hoose, or it to them. Any brief glimmer of optimism will, however, soon be dashed as they set eyes upon the groaning, roaring, snapping carnage of nature which is set between them. Seals, like cats, dogs, gulls, and human beings, die with their eyes wide open, and soon the waters will run red. Hoose, The Last Village, by James E. M. Rowlands. Episode 5. In the space of 2.5 days, a small, unimportant fishing village of barely 200 souls has found itself cast adrift into what was the Irish Sea, following a calamitous seismic event. All other land in their vicinity has disappeared. Immediately prior to this, Dick Bevan and John Armitage had gone out fishing as usual. It was, after all, their profession. They were lost and alone at sea, only able to bear witness to the desolation around them. They have survived 2 sunsets with neither food nor much water, in a small boat filled with a rotting, once miraculous catch, and have just now seen their home port swing into view. Dick Bevan, suddenly stimulated from his maudlin lethargy, is standing come kneeling in the god-awful fishy mess upon his darling boat. He has seen land now too, but his delight turns to dismay at the information his eyes are currently transmitting for his brain to process. He recognizes Hoose, naturally, but has never seen it as it is now. Imagine an elephant's trunk without the rest of the pachyderm, wings with no bird, eyes but no head. The people of Hoose marvelled until so recently across at how beautiful Wales was, while those on that other side could only really see Hoose blinking back at them, of little interest. The irony of continuity. Nature cares not a dot for aesthetics. Perspective is shattered. Bevan also knows, but was keeping that for himself, given their predicament, that they have been drifting in an almost completely opposite direction to one which would have brought them home. Clearly everything is now dreamlike, dissonant, and that good old Viking word, awkward, turned the wrong way. What he has not yet made out is the vast crowd of baying life forms, complete with tusks and blades for teeth, blocking them from their port. Back on the island, people are getting organized. What can they do to clear a passage? It is decided that their stock of tar could be enough to open the way if used intelligently. Animals do not enjoy fire as much as humans. They run, therefore, back and forth with clumps of wood in pairs, with old beams, branches, anything they can lay their hands upon. The lighthouse keeper is back at his post, just enough away from the shore to still be accessible, and has lit an oil lamp to guide the sons of Hoose towards safety, just in case they are not successful before dusk. The wood piles up. The first layers are brushed aside by seals and such. The words are lacking now to describe the contorted, billowing mass of lives which, willingly or not, have been thrust upon this tiny beach. However, once the larger planks are heaved into the piles, parallel, with a good 4 yards space between them, they get the message, and they start groaning to the side, to be replaced by not akin to the new ways. Dick and Armitage have seen the lights and are now close enough to understand their predicament, albeit utterly bewildered by the rest. Ellis Williams sits upon a stone wall observing all of this and recites words in Welsh, a language of which, for all he knows, he and his wife are the only remaining speakers. He mumbles, Ar hyd ar fordir wrth i'r llead arwain, cafwelwyr forwyn yn galw'r gwir yw'r thi, a'r cyntaf sy'n cyrraedd ar lan y môr yn ryfedd, cergair ienw arnynt fol. This roughly translates as I crawl towards the coast, striking forward with the moon, she's waiting at the cliffs, waiting suitors to her home. And as the first of us arrives within a second of the shore, these rocks forever bear her name, engravings laid with gold.
Check it all out, John,
screams Bevan.
It'll bring him away from the edge.
Aye, replies his trusted friend. They delve their bare-dried until now hands into the gunge, bits, heads, bowels, scales and spines, sometimes whole fish, and almost edited but too late. It must all go. Armloads, fists full, shirts laden, hats to the brim, and this malodorous death juice is thrust overboard into the brine. True enough, flippers do begin to turn, but the seals and their whiskered kin at the back are quickly overcome by those already out of the water and making their ways onto Hoose, and who or which now turn frantically back towards Iris and this manna from hell. As the latecomers are trampled in this appalling rush to feast, they are also now consumed by arriving killer whales and other beasts larger even than these and with appetites to match. A veritable smorgasbord of horror as frenzied teeth, fangs, claws, tusks and sheer power meet in the space between the boat and the makeshift harbour about a football field's distance ahead of them. Iris was not built to mount the shore, but to stay moored out there. This means the two will have to swim those final yards in this. Something will have to change. There is now a maelstrom in the waters and fire upon the land, but it appears utterly beyond control and isn't really helping anyone. Just then, Mrs. Armitage steps up, or rather, pushes through. First of all, she had taken a handcart and was ramming the animals with it again and again, back and forth. Once the reddened wheels fell off, she had searched for a replacement, and now she has one, with the help of the dogs. Initially, she had wondered if his horse would push the cart backwards. but Mrs. Dodds assured her that, albeit possible, this may be dangerous to both the animal and any future riders, because it could replicate that behavior in any future dangerous situation. There are no moments in which one cannot learn, so Anne Armitage is in the carriage, brandishing a pitchfork and screaming blood-curdling threats, while the Dodds and other helpers, such as the Lewises, but not the Sherlocks, push the cart forwards into the waves and between the two piles of wood. Then they bring the horse down, which pulls the carriage back out, and so on, and so forth. The plan being to stop anything coming back into the path.
Again! Again!
She orders. As the boat inches closer and the cart wheels crush and macerate, the wood is now covered in tar and ignited. Anne appears as a sort of demented Boudica, lashing out with her weapon from the chariot, riding through the flames into the agonizing, whelping throngs, backwards and forwards, over and over. Dick Bevan observes, in realization, that this was exactly the dream he had had the night before they left. You know, the one that put him off drinking that day. He doesn't know how this could possibly be so, and is about to tell John when the boat lurches suddenly to one side, and he's thrown overboard and immediately sucked below the heaving surface and its attendant abominations.
He's fallen in, I've lost him!
Bevan's hand does not even have time to reach out. Straight down there. He has a moment of hesitation. Do I? No. When John turns back, he is within meters of his wife. Bevan is already buried, lamented, gone. A precipitous grief is preferable to one which will endanger a whole life. Anne withdraws the cart one last time and John jumps into the water. In a few steps he's back in Hoose. Iris is at once engulfed by ocean life and by fire. As he embraces his wife dangerously close to the infernal edge of the known world, clambering over the cart like a wounded water rat, there is a new rumbling. Nothing close to the terror of some hours ago, but given everyone's state of constant nervousness, they all flatten themselves upon the ground. Apart from the Armitages. More fool them, as the source of the din is beneath their feet. The shore, which had survived the initial incident, and all that came, is no longer able to sustain the weight and trembling of all that was upon it. The writhing skirmishes and the chariots and this couple are the straw which breaks its back, and in a cracking flash and then a draining sludgy lament, it all breaks off and sinks into the deep, leaving them inches from death. I was so worried. I thought He hesitates. I would never see you again. Then,
Body!
it is Ben. He's waving from Grove Place, where a small pond or marsh of sorts exists between the trees, and where children used to play, when play was still a thing. Lewis, Dodds, Armitage, Bird, Williams, and even Sherlock have all gathered swiftly. Bevan is still in his lighthouse, now upon a rocky outcrop just away from the land. Grace is nowhere to be seen, nor is Jenny Bird. Ben is pointing down into the water.
Body!
And he's right. There is. The body of Dick Bevan floating in an upright position. Before they can wonder how he washed inland, underland, and into this pond so fast, before they can even be a little sad, even given that they may wish to be such, or are still capable of this now, another call comes, and like a spoon of Ayer's cherry pectoral, erases all these other thoughts. Bill Bevan is shouting his lungs out from the top of the stranded islet lighthouse.
Land ahoy!
Ben drags the body out alone and turns him on his side. The others congregate together, and they all see what appears to be a vast new continent heading towards them. Hoose, The Last Village, by James E.M. Rowlands. Episode 6. Do you know the legend of Maes Gwyddno, the plain of Gwyddno? There once was a landmass between what is or was Wales and Ireland. It was called the Lowland Hundred. Fortified against the sea by a dike, Sarn Badrig, St. Patrick's Causeway, with a series of sluice gates that would be opened at low tide to drain the land. Its capital was Caer Gwyddno, seat of the ruler Gwyddno Garanhir. 2 princes of the realm held charge over the dike. One of these princes, Saithenen, was a drunkard, fighter, and a fool. And it was through his fault, they say, that the sea swept through the open floodgates, plunging the land forever beneath the waves. The people of Hoose have been brought up with the tale, and they know that the church bells of Canter Gwaelod, the Lowland Hundred, always ring out in times of grave danger. Beneath the wave-swept ocean are pretty towns that hearken to the bell rings set pealing through the night, through negligent abandon by a watcher on the wall. The bells of Canter Gwaelod submerged beneath the wave. When the sea was surging with gales upon the wave, the gull so pale was failing to settle on their crest. When waves crashed on the seashore with thunder in its wake, the bells of Canter Gwaelod are silent near the wave. But when the sea is quiet, with waves that aren't foam-flecked, and day is gently slipping behind the far hill's slope, sweet tones are heard arising, and this I know as truth. Bells of Canter Gwaelod are sounding near the wave. Oh, ring out bells of childhood, on ocean's salty floor for early strains of living sound in their song for me. Whilst live the shore I'll think of, on many quiet nights, and bells of Canter Gwaelod still ringing near the wave. What some see as hope of deliverance and others as a return to normal life has turned out as heartbreaking dismay and disillusion. There is no newfound land or continent on which they will set foot. Neither is there a chance at sustenance, escape, or encounters with exotic new civilization. It dawns upon them as slowly as the rusting penny drops, the creaking, scratching realization that here is but another provocation. In other times, we speak of Sargassum, or even the Pacific Garbage Island. In the days of Hoose, this had yet to be given an epithet. Some, like Williams, see the truth of the old folk myths. Others understand and even dread that the tide of debris may contain the corpses of all those gone. In reality, Hoose watches and observes in silence until it inevitably becomes one with the mass of detritus and jetsam bones, clothing, furniture, seaweed, trees, and so on and so forth. I shall spare you some of the grimmer elements.
Hiya, Jen. You all right?
Well, I suppose Mam is doing my head in. Hoose is doing my head in, anyway. And you? Got anything left to serve? I haven't got any money, you know.
Don't you worry about that. Everything's on the house, as long as you promise to remember and chip in to help when...
When the rest of the world rises up out of the sea. Yeah, I understand. Don't worry, Mr. Lewis. I remember everything.
I meant... Oh, well. Right, Scotch or mild? That's all I've got.
Mild. To start.
She's not the only customer. John Armitage sits in the corner by the window, with his arm pressed against the stone white window ledge. The walls are thick and damp. His sleeve is wet. His brow drips with sweat. His other hand is shaking. Lewis has left him a whole bottle, just for him.
Poor Johnny's in pieces.
Aye, must have been awful.
Did they say where they went? Or what they saw? Did they see the others?
Nothing. He talks a lot about massive catches of fish and about Dick. As far as he's concerned, it was his fault. But what can I possibly say? I can hear you, you know, shouts John from the other side. Sorry, pal. Another glass? May as well, eh? I'll join you. Lewis leaves the bar and beckons Jen to follow. The three are now seated together in awkward silence, bar the clinking of glasses. How's your old man? Asks John.
Same as always, fretting, knitting.
The clock ticks, the fire crackles. Where's your friend?
Who's your name?
What's his name? The posh lad. Grant?
Oh, Grace. I don't know.
She lies.
I haven't seen him since...
Where's he from? Asks Lewis.
I think he's from mid-Wales somewhere. He never really told me. He's got a posh accent, though, so not from round here. And not from Liverpool.
I went to Wales once, says Lewis. Didn't like it. Oh, well, don't you worry about that. It's not there anymore. Williams has arrived. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to... No, it's fine. Just stating the obvious, like... John stands gingerly and thanks them both before wrapping a thick and stained woolen scarf of indeterminate colour around his shaggy neck and leaves. He doesn't get further than the curb before he is once more accosted by a neighbour who means well. The lighthouse keeper, Bevan, has been sitting all morning and most of the night before, keeping his light and all senses trained upon the approaching mass of what the world left behind. His eyes are failing. He rubs them, and as he does, the huge, almost flapping bags underneath each crumble and fight to regain their shape. Hiya, John. Coming for a drink? Aye, Bill, but not in here. My round. Hoosians were already famously tolerant to the hard stuff, Olympians of the raised glass. In a time of no automobiles or white-collar jobs to speak of, and now in any case with few reasons, if any, to remain sober, whiskey or any distilled root vegetable is a release from this hellish reality that they inhabit. It just so happens that horseradish poitin is a readily available and hearty beverage, although not for the squeamish. To Dick. Aye, to old Dick. I'll tell you who's a funny one, says Bevan. That tramp. Ben? Yeah, Ben. He's always in the middle of it. What do you mean? Oh, yeah, of course, sorry. I mean, we had a bit of drama with the dogs, and he swooped in with a bloody eagle on his shoulder. Bloody hell. Then, as you know, or perhaps not, he was the one who found the body. Yeah, I heard about that. Doesn't sound like he's done anything bad, though, does it? No, but he's always there, and I don't trust him. Talking of trust, Grace. Who the hell is he? An odd job man. He used to walk up the coast collecting wood. He had a workshop. It's gone now. Right. Like him, then? Do I like him? No, just like him. He's gone now, too. Not far away at the Sherlock's home, things have calmed since we last saw them. Mrs. Sherlock has forgiven her husband's thoughtless altruism. She has more serious concerns.
John, you have to do something. We have to do something. We can't feed the whole family with this.
She points at a few rancid onions and a couple of potatoes and a cabbage. I'll grab us a fish or two.
Don't be ridiculous, you bloody fool. Don't you go anywhere near that water.
So what then? I can ask about... I could see if the others have anything to share. She cuts him off.
Stop it, John. Just stop.
Her husband looks at his shoes.
If you don't do it, I will.
He doesn't have to ask what. She hands him a long, sharp knife.
Take it.
She rasps. Yes, all right. He swallows heavily. A cold wind rises. Somewhere, in one of the abandoned homes in a terrace at the Grove, footsteps are quietly creeping up damp stairs. A hatch opens at the foot of the stairwell, and a man pops his head sheepishly out of the secret passageway. It's Grace. He closes the door, and as he does, replies to somebody below. Yes, of course. Good night. The waves beat against Hoose's ragged and ever-decreasing terra firma. This sound should be savoured and cherished, as it will soon be a distant memory. The jaws of the inexorable new continent close silently around us all. And in the distance, if you listen, the bells are now ringing.